Okay. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Today, I am sharing a little bit more about my priestessing journey, particularly how I came back into some kind of, I don't know, communicative relationship with the energy, body, entity that is familiar to me by the name Jesus. Um, I always like to just say this is not a pitch for Jesus or for Christianity. It's just my particular journey towards being in more harmony with my own, like in my own system and in the ecology that I'm a part of, and in relationship to the lineage um, that I'm also a part of. So yeah, I'll also just say I didn't really write any notes for today. This is a part of the story that always kind of feels like it just gets told the way that it wants to be told. Um, so yeah, I will kind of let that happen. So as we're gathering, just this is for me and also for you. I'll encourage you to just do whatever little wiggles, whatever little tending to your own soma, your own system that feels good for you to stay with or to be with the kind of field that we're creating together through, through my words, but also kind of through the energy behind them and with them. Hello, good morning. So, yeah, I'm actually going to just take a minute and settle in myself. And yeah, I'll encourage you to, rub your belly or give some gentle self massage or little pat downs. Okay. So, let's see. I think the part that's wanting to be shared right now is just actually just comes from preparing in the last 45 minutes. I noticed waking feeling just kind of dry, just kind of dull. Um, I didn't sleep very well. And yeah, I felt like kind of sluggish getting out of bed um, as I was doing my meditation before this, it's just my daily practice. I just started to ask and kind of tune in to Jesus, to the energy of Jesus. And what I noticed was this sensation of kind of like, really, I just started asking, like, you know, bring, like, allow me to show up in the way that's needed for today, in the way that whoever tunes in, that it's useful for them. And I felt this kind of like a saturation, kind of like, um, feeling like the dry sponge of my form started to saturate or soak or get a little bit of moisture from the air, and I could feel some of my own emotions starting to move. I could feel kind of a, like rain hitting dry earth, some, yeah, just soaking in, and like some tears wanted to move through that didn't necessarily feel like mine, but it just felt like um, yeah, there was this a a saturation or a movement, a new movement that was allowed, um, and a kind of warmth and circulation. I guess that's a good word for it too, like a circulation that was kind of restarted for today. Um, so that's a way for me to describe, I guess, the my current sort of somatic experience with the energy being of Jesus. There's a real like warmth and an immediate sort of movement that I experience a being with. Um, and totally can say it hasn't always been like that. I was not really into Jesus at all. Even as a fairly religious young person, I was pretty down with the general concept of God, or like kind of the didn't have a problem with the kind of the theological pieces of that, but I never really had and didn't get that the Jesus ness. You know, I didn't really get the Jesus people. I had actually quite a strong aversion to Jesus people. Um, and could kind of get the like Jesus as a moral compass, or a teacher, like kind of an ethical guide, but didn't really have much connection to the beingness of Jesus beyond that. And then as a later young person, I, like many, came to feel very disillusioned with the church entirely. I left as in my early 20s and felt very content in my sort of Eastern mysticism explorations. Um, and or I thought I was content. I felt content enough at the time. And as I shared in last week's, really needed that sort of immersion in a different um, uh, kind of cultural lineage to find a window back into experiencing the goodness of myself. Um, and so that I feel so grateful for that. And that was really an important sort of part of the path. And then I had this experience that sort of rerouted things in a completely unexpected way. I don't feel like I was looking for something more. I definitely was not looking for Jesus. Definitely was not wanting any kind of association with Christianity. But I had gone on this sort of weekend fundraising thing because I worked for a nonprofit at the time. And we were in Santa Fe, and my friend who I was with, she had actually recently converted to Catholicism, and she wanted to stop at which was mind-boggling to me, but she wanted to stop at the cathedral on our way out of town, and so that was fine. And we went into the church, and it's my memory of it is that there's like a side or a side chapel to St. Joseph, and I wandered over to that side and I sat down, and the and just started kind of letting my thoughts mull, and I at the time I was having a real conflict with my dad, or it seemed very real at the time. And I found myself just sort of talking aloud about it. I mean, internally aloud, but there was a cross. The cross, the crucifix in the chapel was what some of you may be familiar with. The it's called the cross of San Damiano, and it is the crucifix that Saint Francis, the legend is, had his conversion experience before, that it came alive in a way for him that really switched something for him. And that was the cross that was there. And I found myself just sort of like looking at it and starting to talk to Jesus about this problem I was having. I was just like, come on, what's the deal with dads? You have two dads. What do you do about that? Like, what do we do with our dads? And I remember hearing this voice with my inner ear that said something like, why are you worrying about that? Why are you worrying about that? Whatever it is you're worried about, it's already being taken care of. All you have to do, these are the words I feel self-conscious about because they sound so cheesy, I guess, but these were the words that came. All you have to do is open to my love. And I felt this weight of 1,000 tons lifting from my body. And with my kind of inner eye, I could see this orb of light coming from the crucifix and surrounding my whole body. And I wasn't quite grasping at the moment what was happening. I could feel that. I heard the words. I could see this light. I felt the weightlessness. And then I remember leaving the chapel and kind of being like, did something just happen? What was that? Like, it wasn't totally, it didn't snap something, it wasn't like it made sense all of a sudden or something. It was like I felt a wave of something and then it passed. But then over the coming days, I started to share a little bit with my friend, like, I think I experienced something different. And then I noticed as the days went by, I felt different. I felt light. I felt an ease in myself that I'd never experienced before. I felt like, yeah, a weightlessness. I felt, and again, this felt really silly at the time, but I felt a kind of joy, that meant that, like, I remember telling my friend, one of my other, actually a couple clients at the time, I remember saying, like, I feel like a cheesy Sunday school song, like, I've got that joy, 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 joy down in my heart. It didn't make sense to me, and I felt self-conscious about it, but I felt this, like, yeah, just this lightness of being, this levity that I couldn't really explain and never experienced before. And I also felt a deep humility, like I had not even realized the sort of hubris I had been operating under by thinking I was in control of all the things I worried about. And at the same time was, felt deeply humbled, like deeply kind of returned to my right size as the one that is not in charge. And at the same time, like, restored to my right size in a filling way, in a bigger way, like in a sense of being beloved. And yeah, I can only describe this as now as a kind of altered state. that I experienced for about 6 weeks, um, where it was just this, I would wake in the morning and feel so alight and um, kind of bathe in the experience of my practice, my meditation, my yoga practice. I even was like going to daily mass at the time just to receive the Eucharist. It felt nourishing to me for the first time ever. The like dogma and even words of the liturgy didn't matter. Um, I just felt really nourished by it, and it felt very hard to hard for me to understand, but I just tried to follow the impulse, I guess. Um, and even in those 6 weeks, I remember having the sense like, okay, this isn't probably going to last forever. Like I was riding a high, right? That it was probably not going to last forever. But what felt different this time was this sense like that I could allow it to happen. I could experience and appreciate it with an open hand, and not really need it to be permanent, in order for it to still be real, for it to still be um, of value. I think in experiences past, I've had like, I've had a number of what I would call encounters with the divine, encounters with source. Um, and my memory of them prior to this time was that when the moment passed, I would because everything rides in cycles, right? Like peak valley recovery or activation, deactivation. I didn't quite have a grasp of um, that natural progression yet. And so when the thing would pass, I'd feel like something was wrong, or like that wasn't real. What had happened wasn't real. So it would often leave me in a kind of more contracted or depressed state, questioning. And this time I was sort of riding this like altered experience, and I could feel a sense of open-handedness, like, okay, yep, this will pass, this will fade, and that's okay. And as that time went on, and um it did start to kind of close up or fade, um, I remember feeling like, okay, yep, here it's passing, but something has shifted. Like my center of gravity really shifted. Um, I had a sense that like that was showing me something that was even more real. Even if I wasn't going to be in like permanent, awareness or contact with it. So the other thing I think that wants to be shared, hello, welcome. During that 6 weeks, I went on retreat. I happened to just kind of get invited to this interspiritual contemplative retreat. And while I was there, I remember because I remember asking Jesus actually. I remember being like, I just need some time to like process what's happening. And the very next day, my friend had emailed me that there was this scholarship position for this retreat. So I was able to get into that. And over that weekend, I remember like I felt so close to that experience of kind of contact or connection was so close to the experience to the surface. Like I barely had to close my eyes, and I felt like I was right there in that presence of, for me, it was that felt sense of unconditional love that was familiar to me by the name Jesus, but that I know shows up in throughout the cosmos by many names. Um, And over this weekend, I remember just feeling so sort of, um, I guess, permeable to the experience, or sort of raw to the experience. I could just, like, yeah, just drop right back in, and felt so soaked, so saturated in this embrace, this loving embrace. And one of the images that came to me then, that has really stayed with me, was feeling pregnant, like having this sense of my womb being like heavy and full, feeling really heavy and full in my pelvic bowl. And but then also the image, if folks are familiar with, like, when you're, well, I've only seen this as like in a home birth these days. And there's a there are times when the birthing person is like in the tub, or even, you might imagine them standing or something, but then the partner is standing behind them, or slides into the birthing tub behind them to hold them up by their arms, hold them from behind. And that was the image that came to me, that I was like sitting in the birthing tub, birthing something. My womb was very full, and I could feel Jesus both as like full in my womb, both like the baby I was carrying. I know how this sounds. But also as this loving, sturdy presence behind me, kind of holding me while I labor, like knowing that I'm doing this sort of sacred laboring, and being that particularly masculine presence with me, like at my back. And this was also very altering for me, because I had only ever had the sense of like the masculine and the divine masculine as that Father God, as the judge, as the um not even necessarily in a harsh way, but in a paternal, a kind of distantly paternal way. Um, and this presence that to me was familiar by the name Jesus. Yeah, it had a particularly masculine flavor to it. We don't have to necessarily use those words, but like as a gendered way, but the energy of a very calm, steady, firm presence holding me. And it was, yeah, it was the most support, the most sort of immediate physical, like felt very visceral and physical in my body, to be connected, to like be held in that way. Um, And now I would describe it as, I'd have the language of like kind of the yin essence of the masculine, like that quiet, holding presence. And yeah, it was just really sweet. It was a really powerful, um, connection. And I'll say here too, like, even that has waxed and waned. Like, it's not, um, like I'm this constant Jesus high or whatever. Um, I think there has, yeah, there's times of distance, there's times of total disconnect. But those made an imprint for me, a memory for me of the sort of energetic blueprint of this entity that at least to me, it kind of goes beyond, faith or belief, and more about like what my body was able to tune into in those moments, um, and the energetic frequency of this being, whatever name we'll call them. And at the time, there wasn't anything particularly like, um, sexual about the experience, but it was in retrospect, I can use the language of eroticism. Like, it was certainly erotic in the sense of like drawing on and awakening a sensual sense of relatability to this presence. And yeah, over time there, I explored more, both kind of drawing on the tantric goddess tradition. I would explore more sort of the intersection of like spirituality and sexuality, um, and explore more like orgasm and sex as points of prayer, as aspects of prayer, and relating with Jesus as lover, as like, yeah, both like physical, spiritual, sexual companion, in a way that really, for me, helped me again re-experience all of me as good, as sacred, as part of the cosmic whole. And that has, yeah, that's just been profoundly healing for me. Um, I think the last thing I'll say is that there this was also sort of the starting point, because I was so like not really I was not excited about, on one level I was having this sort of ecstatic experience, but on another level I was not excited about Jesus coming back into my life. It complicated things a lot. I was like, it felt very inconvenient to me. I'd spent the last 10 years in therapy, like extracting the religiosity from my soul. And now they were just like kind of waltzing back in. What do you expect me to do? On this same retreat, I met a woman who introduced herself as a Roman Catholic woman priest. And when she said what she was, my jaw dropped and I burst into tears. And then I avoided her for 2 days because I was like, that's too much. I cannot. And then I came back around on the third day and was like, okay, probably I should talk to you. What is this whole Roman Catholic women priest thing? And she told me about it. And I'll share more about this probably next week. I had never had like this strong sense like, oh, I want to be a priest, but I'm Catholic, so I can't. It was never that. It just was never even really an option to consider. Um, but when she told me what she was, there was this deep sense of like, oh my God, that like of both attraction and aversion to this. And so I had to pursue that and just sort of see where the energy pulled me. When I had my first follow-up conversation with a woman who would become one of my mentors, who's also a Roman Catholic woman priest, I remember saying, just so you know, this is not me saying I want to be a priest. This is just me like trying to find out what this experience meant, like why I'm having such a strong reaction to, learning about the RCWP, Roman Catholic women priests. This is not me saying anything. And she's like, okay. Um, and but those happened in that same time, and it really felt like um I Jesus, like Jesus, the energy of Jesus was opening some doors for me to, if nothing else, restore some communication between me and the lineage that I had. Um, I don't know what word you want to use, tried to escape or sort of felt disowned from. And the question that really I pursued was like, how can I be in a good way with this lineage? And began to feel similar to just kind of the fact of my whiteness. Like, how can I be in a good way with the fact that my ancestors um, have been Christian, have been white, as white became a thing, um, and just sort of living with that lineage in my cells and in my psyche. What does it mean to be a responsible descendant to these ancestors? Yeah, so I think that's probably good enough for story for today. I want to leave us with a very simple practice to explore just for your own um, awareness, like where does the Jesus energy live for you? So, you might already be noticing that, like maybe there were things that were stirred or feel activated in your system, just having listened to my sharing. But we'll just take a minute to kind of tune back in at the sensory level and particularly invite you to kind of intend or contain some of the energy that may be sort of in the head or intellectual cognitive place, and give it a little brush down, a little pat down, and a little rub down to the lower body. So you might feel your feet on the ground or rock your seat a few times side to side, settling through your hip bones, maybe touching the back of your body gently, a little gentle massage through the front of your body. And let's just take a couple of moments to do some breath into the belly, what some of you may know as hara breath. So breathing in to imagine a sphere of light, your belly expanding, and breathing out to let that sphere of light contract. And you can wiggle your toes. You can give a little sigh or a little hum, just allowing some gentle activation there through the belly. And yeah, when like in classes that I lead and in practices I lead, we'd spend a lot more time here, but just doing just kind of a light check-in, a light brush. So seeing if you can continue to feel some sensation through your lower body, your hands on your thighs, the weight of your seat on the ground. Just invite you to notice what happens in your physical body as you tune in or call in or evoke the energy of Jesus. Just notice what that word does to your soma, to your system. And see if you can receive or tune into the word, the energy behind the word without thinking too hard. It's not about, doesn't have to be about faith or belief, or theology or dogma. It's just recognizing that that there is an energy that has had an impact on our world and on ourselves as parts of that world. So just letting the word land where it lands and noticing, does your body contract or pull back? Does it soften? Is there attraction, aversion? No sensation, numbness? Is there any particular part of your body that wakes up or shuts down? Tuning into that frequency of what we are calling Jesus. What is your body's memory? What is your body's encoding of this energy? And if you're watching now or later, I'll invite you to just put in the chat or just note for yourself, like, what is the sensation? What's the sensation you're aware of when you tune into or call in or invite, feel into that word, the energy behind the word? You might have a strong, strong reaction one way or another, or it might be fairly mild or neutral. All that's good data about how you are in relationship to this as an energy. So just go ahead and note that, and then we'll take a minute to just sort of come out of that touching in point, coming back into your own, just sensing into your own system, settling, maybe a couple sighs, a couple yawns. Oh. Looking around you, maybe for something friendly or beautiful in your space. Okay. So that is, yeah, I think that feels good for today, for what wants to be shared. There's a lot more to it, and I feeling like we didn't even really get too much into the funky part. Although I don't know, it still feels pretty funky to me, to have Jesus in my life at all at this point. But something I do want to close with is just that, as you may have seen, I am gathering folks for a kind of small version of the sanctuary circle, where if I can get 15 to 25 people committed to a 6-month period of contributing at a certain level, I can make a series of offerings available to our whole community at sliding scale. Pay what you can, bring a friend, kind of thing. So I'm calling it this community supported spiritual care offer or initiative. And it's really intended to create rhythms of practice for touching into the earth, to the seasons, to our own physicality and bodies, and to community practice. Um, One thing I feel conscious of is that there's just so much going on in the world. And I feel like we need more than ever these, new old rhythms and rituals, um, that help us metabolize, and if not make sense, at least move the energy through of these experiences that are bigger than what any one of our single bodies can handle. So, um, yeah, I would love to have any of you be a part of that, to create the possibility for all of us to nurture and nourish simple and rich, culturally respectful, earth and body based wisdom, living from a more grounded and nourished, intuitive, connected, and joyful place, and shifting in those small ways, but routine or rhythmic ways, the kind of overwhelm, indecision, paralysis, reactivity, and hopelessness that so much of this, the death of modernity, can really leave a lot of us in. So, if this is something that speaks to you, please message me, or email me, be in touch, and yeah, I'd love to have you be a part of that core group that I'm gathering. Next week, I'll be sharing the sort of part 3 of my priestess journey, which I'm calling the Bring Your Own Belonging insight. It's a couple of images, or visions that I had that really helped to clarify this sort of last chapter of my path over this last year, and that has really helped bring forward the offer that I'm sharing with you all now. So this Roots and Rhythms offer. Okay, see you then. Have a beautiful day. Good to see you all, and take good care.